Alright, in this video we're going to cover oiling points on the Blue Sky 1501. This is Series 1 model. So our daily oiling point is going to be our rotary hook, which is down here. Get you a better view. Rotary hook, that's what your bobbin case goes into. There's a rotary hook that's not in the machine, just to show you. So this is what spins as it runs. The basket is held in place. This is the basket, the black part. So the basket gets held in place and this is what rotates. So we want to make sure this gets oil in there every 4 to 6 hours of use. Otherwise this can get hot, it can swell up, and then it can cause play in the basket front to back. And if you look through here, we have a very small hole that needle goes into, and if you got play in there like this, that needle could start rubbing on the back side of the basket, front part, breaking needles, a lot of thread breaks. So this is a critical point to keep oiled and maintain your machine. This is a consumable part, so you want to try to maintain these the best you can. Keep them clean, oil them up every 4 to 6 hours of use. And I'm going to bring you up a little bit closer here. We'll take off this light so it's bright. Alright, so you're going to need an offset screwdriver to get your throat plate screws out. There should be one in your toolbox. I have a nice ratcheting one. You can get them in a hardware store if you need one like this. You don't have to take this throat plate off to do the oiling. I'm doing this for viewing purposes here. Same with this cover. I'm just taking this off for viewing purpose. Okay. I like to lay my set screws back here on the shelving so I don't lose them or have them fall off on the floor as easily. Alright, so with this, a little better view here. You can use your hand wheel, engage it into the gears, rotate it a little bit. I bring it up right in here. You'll see the railing that's kind of sticking up on that basket area. That's called the raceway. And that's where you need to get oil in there. So right in there, that is the raceway, and you'll see there's little groove cuts. Those cuts are what keep the oil in that raceway and keep it lubricated as it's spinning. So it can dry up pretty fast, so every 4 to 6 hours make sure you get some oil in here. Now there is a couple ways to do this. I'm doing it from the front with the throat plate off. We can do it from the top, right onto that raceway. Another place I see people do is they'll take the bobbin case out here and around the 8 o'clock area position between the silver and the black, we'll drop oil there and you'll see it run down into the raceway that way. And my favorite way is to probably from the side view here, and I'll rotate the hand wheel back so it's open on this right side. And this would be where I would come in and oil my raceway here, just like that. And don't forget to work that oil into that rotary hook. What you do is just come up onto the control panel and hit your 100-degree icon to cycle that oil into that rotary hook. So I'll hit the 100 here, cycles that oil in. Doesn't hurt to do it a couple times just to work that oil in, 3 or 4 times. Okay, so that's your daily point. Once a week, right back here behind the throat plate, we have a hole next to that set screw. You want to make sure you get some oil inside this hole. A couple drops, 2-3 drops is pretty good. That is oiling a bushing in this rotary hook shaft here. So from side view you can't see it, but the rotary hook is on the rotary hook shaft, and back in here in the casing there is a long piece which is called a bushing, and then the rest of the shaft goes back. So that's oiling that bushing. If these bushings don't get oiled enough, they can get hot. It can actually seize this rotary hook shaft. So make sure you're getting some oil in here once a week. Bring you up for a taller view here. Alright, so side of the machine here as well. We have once a week here, oiling point as well. A couple drops in here, 2-3 drops is fine, once a week. Back side of the machine here, behind the thread rack, 1 or 2 drops back here. I usually do like 1 less drop here, only because there is an electronic board underneath this cover. And if you get too much oil in here, it could start splattering around and get into that board area. But you don't want to eliminate this as well, so just do 1 less little oil in here. If you're doing 3 in the front, do 2 back here. Or if you're doing 2 in the front, do 1 back here. All depends on your usage of your machine as well. So if you're not using your machine daily, you don't need to be oiling this once a week as well. Alright. Once a week we need to get in here and oil up our needle bars as well. That's what's recommended. To me, once a week might be a little extreme. I'll explain a little bit about that. If you have a cover that has holes in it, you can go through the cover and get your oil points that way as well. If your cover does not have these oiling points, you can take this cover off to get to them. Alright, so what you'll see inside this after you take your cover off, you'll see that's actually a piece of felt pad. This felt pad is for the excess oil to absorb into. So if you get in here and this is bone dry, if you put your finger in here and press on that pad and you don't get any oil on your finger, you know this is a point that's being overlooked for oiling. So as a tech, I could take a machine apart and then see that people were not oiling at these points, even though they said they were. I could see it right here. Alright, so each needle bar, in between the spring and the needle bar itself, pen oiler might be better than what I'm using right now. You'll get a little less oil in here, like 1 drop is fine, 1 or 2 drops. Again, this is for viewing. So I'm doing every needle bar here, all 15. And then of course, after all the oiling points are done, I would suggest running like your H test, so you can run all 15 needles, and that'll work in the oil on all those needle bars. Alright, so same thing with the top part of the needle bar, which will be up here. You'll see there is a bar with a spring inside there as well. Let me see if I can get a better lighted on here. You can see the bar inside there. It actually has a silver shaft with a spring on the top. So that's the top of this needle bar. I'll move it up and down a little bit. So you want to make sure you get a little bit of oil on each of those tops as well. Again, this is suggested once a week. Personally, if you get in here once every 2 weeks, that's fine with me. That's probably what I would do on my machine. I don't use mine daily. I mean, mine is for demo purpose. For classes, things like that. Okay, so that's how you oil your needle bars. Again, that's suggested once a week. Now what I'm going to do is change needles here, position. I'm on needle 8. I'm going to go to needle 1 for viewing purpose here. Okay. Do a taller view again. Alright, so on this silver rail here, this raised up ridge, this is what your take-up levers, and this is your take-up lever right here. So on the back side of that take-up lever, there's a plastic piece that sits on that railing. That's what's holding that in place until it gets into the middle to actually run. Then it hooks up onto a roller bearing, and that roller bearing is moving up and down. So that's what's making your take-up lever move up and down. So that little roller bearing that moves up and down is, you can oil there. I would suggest once a week if you can get in there, once a month, you know, just a little bit in there every once in a while to get some oil in there. And let's see if we can get a better view here. So this little silver arm right here, can't get a good camera view on it right at the moment, but you'll see the black horseshoe kind of shape that's going around it. That is the back of the take-up lever. So the inside of that is the roller bearing. You'll see a silver round roller. That is a roller bearing. So once a week, just get a little bit of oil in there. I just put a little oil in it. Also right here up on the silver rail, I explained here, there's a set screw here in the first. If you go right next to it, there's a hole here. That is an oiling point as well. So go ahead and drop a couple oil drops inside there. That is for the pressure foot to lift back up. And then we also have right in the silver plate here, you'll see a set screw, and it's got a hole right in the middle of that set screw with like a little wick. That is actually an oiling point as well. So it's going to oil inside that arm. There we go. I had to rotate the main shaft to see it there. Right there's the hole. So a little drop of oil inside that. Get that wick wet inside there. Put a couple drops. And it doesn't hurt. You'll see the silver shaft here. Silver shaft here. So that's the shaft that we oiled from the top. There is holes on that shaft to have the oil come on the outside, but I actually put a drop or two on the outside as well, just to work that oil in. And again, that's the reciprocator, or the shaft for lifting up the pressure foot. So that shaft is for lifting the pressure foot up. So there's a bumper, a little rubber pad that goes underneath, and that's what lifts that pressure foot up. So we want to make sure we get that shaft oiled once a week as well. Now I'm going to switch sides. I'm going to go over to needle 15, which I of course turned to my main shaft, so I'm not at the 100 degrees, so we got to hit the 100 here, cycle it, go to needle 15. Okay. So the same thing with this side, basically. On needle 15, on top, the silver rail, again, we have a set screw here, and further in, if you go in about an inch further, there is a hole there. And again, that's an oiling point for the reciprocator shaft, which is inside there. Let's see if I can get a better light. So right here, that silver shaft is what I just oiled inside. So again, I put a little drop on the outside of that as well, and that is for the reciprocator. And this is the reciprocator right here. So as you can see, this is a black reciprocator. Again, once a week. There is at the bottom of that shaft right in here, there is a roller bearing. Sometimes I just throw a little drop of oil on that roller bearing as well, because that roller bearing down here is what's riding on this head as it moves back and forth for color changes. And there is one at the top as well. I'll give you a point view of that. Go back to needle 1. Okay, so that roller bearing at top is right by that color change motor. That little round piece, it's kind of the size of nickel, quarter, somewhere in there. It's round and it's a roller bearing. So that's doing the same thing up top. That little roller bearing there is rolling on the back side of that head as it moves back and forth. So it's good to put a little drop of oil on there once in a while as well. So that's once a week. Alright, so there is one more point over here. Needle 15 again. I took the liberty here. I took both these set screws out on this Velcro bar. That's where our little this motor here, if I turn the thumb wheel, that's where our little slider hook comes down in between the Velcro bars. So this will help you align it back up. You want to make sure that slider goes in and out nice and smooth before you tighten back up these set screws here. So to get to these other two set screws on this silver plate, I take one out already, but to get to this bottom one, it's harder with these set screws in, so that's why I took them out, so that can be pushed down, and then I can get to this one. I can leave that in, just let it fall down like that, so I can get into this area to view. Behind this bar here, this is for this motor. So as you can see, that's what pushes your reciprocator to release the needle bar. But behind that, there is a large crank. See if I can get a better lighting here. Alright, so you can kind of see it there. That piece, if I can do this, hold the camera and the flashlight and point at things here. So this little guy right here, that is the top of the crank arm. If you look inside, you'll see this is the large part, and it comes downwards to the lower part. There's the lower part. Alright, trying to hold the flashlight and camera to do this all at the same time here. Alright, so there we go. So here's the bottom of the crank arm. Right inside here you'll see a hole. That is an oiling point. So once a week we need to get a little oil in here. There's not bearings here, but it rides on side a metal shaft, so we want to make sure we keep this lubricated. We don't want this to get hot and swell up as well. So once a week we need to get a drop of oil in here. And at the top of that, this guy right up here, there's an oiling point on the top part of that. So let me try to move the main shaft here. There we go. So on the top of that, for viewing purpose here, I can't really get you a good view, but on the very top there's another hole. There is bearings in this. That's why you see grease in here. So this is fully packed with grease, but you want to make sure you get a little oil inside that top hole. That keeps that lubricated up here for these needle bearings inside this crank arm. Again, that's once a week. This is probably the hardest point to get to, but again, this is important oiling points to help maintain your machine and make your machine last a long time. So if you maintain your machine will last forever. These are made to last 10 years, but if you maintain them well, they'll probably last 20 or 30. Alright, so after all your oiling in here, before you reassemble, as you can see, this plate will move up and down a little bit. It's got a little bit of area for here, up and down, up, down. So when you reinstall your plate, make sure you put it in and then go up with it as fully as you can. Make sure both set screws are in there when you tighten it down. So when you reinstall this plate, make sure it's fully in the up position when you tighten that back down. And then of course take the time to align this up with your motor so that that slider hook comes down nice and smooth before tightening up these set screws here.